Hey everybody, and thanks for watching our video. We're going to talk about the growth insights across the lifespans today, but not in a boring textbook way. We're going to use real experiences with other people and with ourselves to show what this actually looks like in real life. My name is Kimberly Carter, and I'm going to be discussing my two important developmental experiences. My first experience was supporting an adolescent struggling with her body image. My second experience was my personal journey in improving my physical activity during middle adulthood.
My name is Liz Varenas, and I'm going to be discussing one of my students and her challenges with mental health and emotional regulation. And similarly, I'm going to be talking about my own emotional regulation and processing and managing my own emotions. I have a student who is very emotionally turbulent. She has exhibited behaviors of self-harm and suicidal ideations. She has really struggled with emotional regulation. She has attended and is currently attending outside therapy. She goes 4 days a week for 3 hours at a time, and they're working with her in one-on-one as well as in group settings to help strengthen her overall ability to regulate her emotions in stressful situations. However, I noticed that there was a deficit in implementation of that when she was in a dysregulated state. So I really focused on working with her and practicing different de-escalation strategies. A lot of what we did involved me modeling for her appropriate ways to respond in a situation. We talked about things that are and are not developmentally appropriate for someone her age. And so rather than, saying like, use your words, I modeled for her what those words sounded like. So if she was dysregulated in a specials class, practicing and rehearsing almost in that moment what we were going to say to that teacher, because I'm not always going to be around. And a concern of mine is, developing a codependent relationship with her. So, we are not codependent, but a dependent relationship with her, I should say. And so I really wanted her to feel like she had the ability to independently advocate for herself, even when I'm not around. So let's practice the skill set of saying, in this moment, I'm upset. I need to take a minute. And so we would practice it. I would say it and then I would make her say it. And even though she felt like in that moment that it was silly for us to be doing that, she did reflect one time and, let me know like, hey, like that was actually really helpful because I got to say that in specials today and my teacher let me take a break. So I think that, repetition and modeling for her was really beneficial in helping her practice that emotional regulation in real time in that moment of dysregulation. I feel like a key component that we really focused on is that idea of self-regulation. So we spent a lot of time identifying strategies that we can use when we're dysregulated or find ourselves in, a more red or blue zone where we need to get ourselves back to a place where we're able to function from a clear mind. So we practice different breathing strategies or, taking a minute to draw or read a book or just put our head down. We practiced grounding strategies such as the 5 4 3 2 1 technique, which is they look for 5 things they see, 4 things they touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing that you can taste, or 1 thing that you like about yourself. And so using or providing a variety of strategies for self-regulation, I feel like was beneficial. And I think that directly ties into what Vygotsky said about the zone of proximal development. Like there is a gap between what people can do independently and what they can do with support. And I think that's true for all people. I think, like, yes, I was able to apply this in a situation with a student, but I think that's also something I talked about with her. There was this idea that we are all human and we're still growing and we're still learning. And so even though I'm nearly, I'm over double her age, I'm still finding myself in these places where I'm still learning these things, and that's part of being human. And if we're able to say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this right now," that's okay, because that's all something we're going to experience. And so it's like, what do we do with that discomfort? What do we do when we're in this place? And so practicing those strategies, I think, was, the biggest thing that made a difference for her.
For my other development project, I decided to work with a 13-year-old girl named Annalise. She's in her early adolescence. This stage of life is marked by major physical, emotional, and social changes. During this time, many adolescents become more self-aware and sensitive to how others perceive them. Annalise has recently begun struggling with body image. She often expresses dissatisfaction with her appearance and engages in negative self-talk. This is significant because body image plays a major role in self-esteem and identity development during adolescence. This is an extremely common issue. Many adolescents experience pressure from social media, peers, and cultural beauty standards. These influences can lead to unhealthy comparisons and low self-esteem. Understanding this challenge is important because it allows us to better support young people and help them develop a healthier sense of self. Through this experience, I learned that addressing body image concerns requires more than simple reassurances. At first, I believed that giving compliments and encouragement would be enough. However, I realized that deeper emotional and cognitive factors were involved. This experience taught me the importance of patience, empathy, and consistency. Growth does not happen overnight, and it requires ongoing support and understanding. In supporting Annalise, I focused on creating a safe and non-judgmental environment where she could openly express her feelings. I engaged in regular one-on-one conversations with her, discussing unrealistic beauty standards in media, and encouraged her to focus on her strengths and abilities rather than her appearance. I also supported her involvement in activities she enjoys, like tennis and volleyball, to help her create and build her confidence and sense of competence. In looking at the theoretical insights, I looked to Piaget, Erikson, and Vygotsky. Piaget's cognitive developmental theory helped to explain Annalise's thinking. During adolescence, individuals enter the formal operational stage, which allows for abstract thinking and self-reflection. This means adolescents are more likely to analyze themselves critically and compare themselves to others, especially in terms of appearance. Erikson's psychosocial theory identifies adolescence as a stage of identity versus role confusion. During this stage, individuals are trying to figure out who they are. Body image plays a major role in this process because adolescents often base their self-worth on how they look and how they believe others see them. Vygotsky's social cultural theory emphasizes the importance of social interaction and support. This theory guided my approach by highlighting the importance of providing guidance, encouragement, and supportive environment to help Annalise develop healthier thinking patterns and emotional responses. These theories helped shape my approach. For example, I helped Annalise critically evaluate unrealistic beauty standards, which connects to Piaget's idea about abstract thinking. I also provided consistent emotional support, which aligns with Vygotsky's emphasis on guided learning. Additionally, I focused on supporting her identity development as emphasized by Erikson by encouraging her to value her own abilities and personal qualities. Both of our other developmental projects involved teenagers who were struggling with different situations, emotional regulation, and body image. But it came down to how both of these kids saw themselves. They both had a negative self-concept, and telling them something positive didn't fix it. Their support had to be more than just words. And this is where the theory started making more sense. They were also both heavily impacted by external factors like family, peers, school, and media.
Given these two situations that we talked about, we are able to see how a lot of different theories apply and play a huge part in what we were seeing and what we were implementing. As we know, Erickson has a theory of like different stages of development, and at the age of the students that we were working with, at that age they're in the identity versus inferiority stage, and so they are developing identity and confidence within themselves. So both of our situations show what happens kind of when it doesn't fully develop the way it should, or when they're still in that developmental process. Vygotsky again supports this idea that we do need support before we just like independently do things. Both of our students needed support in the moment, not just after the fact. And they weren't independent in that moment, and so it's not realistic to be expecting them to be. And then Albert Bandura connects a lot of their behaviors and thinking patterns because they're learned over time, which means they can be unlearned, but it does take some consistency. And so I think as we're thinking about all of that, again, we're thinking about this theme that this growth and this development, it's lifelong. It's something they're always going to be continuing to work through, and relying on other people to be a good and positive influence, I think makes all the difference in the world. And interestingly enough, I do think that both Kim and I chose topics for our own self-development that were intrinsically motivated and included almost a positive mindset for ourselves of we're still growing, we're still learning, and this is our first time at life too. So just speaking transparently and candidly, I, in the last 3 years, unexpectedly lost my mother, and then my father, and then my grandmother, who was my legal guardian for the majority of my life. Um, I'm 29 years old. That is a lot of loss to experience back to back to back. And I wish that it was a situation where it was easy and not convoluted, although death never usually is. But I think all in all, it was such a mass amount of grief that I experienced in such a short amount of time that I can full-heartedly say that I have not fully processed everything. And I do think I wanted to focus on that just because I want to be candid and authentic and the most true version of myself, but while still recognizing there is room for growth. And so yeah, I chose to focus on, my overall emotional regulation around my grief. I think it's something that we can all understand as teachers. We just kind of push our feelings down or to the side because there's other people's needs that we need to meet. However, um, I think it's something I do need to face and not just continue to avoid. So I really wanted to face head on some of those avoidant habits, because there's no way for me to improve if I'm just continuing to be like, la la la, there's no problem, and everything's normal and this is fine, because in reality it's not, and it's hard, and that's okay. But just finding ways to be more in touch with my emotions. So I used a variety of strategies to help me, I think, be more emotionally aware and emotionally present. And some of those included using a feeling tracker, as well as journaling, and just overall responding in situations versus reacting. So I did some research and I found an app that I just put on my phone called How We Feel. And so when you open up the app, it's like, how are you feeling? And it's prompting you to check in. It then gives you 4 prompts. One's red, another is yellow, one is blue, and the last one is green. And so red is high energy unpleasant, yellow is high energy pleasant, blue is low energy unpleasant, and green is low energy pleasant. And so if I were to click on red, hypothetically, it's prompting me with a slew of words that might help articulate the most appropriate word for how I'm feeling. And so each one of the words has a definition listed under it. So if I chose to say that I was feeling livid or enraged, let's say enraged, I would be able to log that emotion. It would ask me a variety of questions about what am I doing? Who am I with? Where are you? And so I could put in like work or home or school. And so I would do that every day, at least twice a day, morning and afternoon, to keep track of my emotions. What is my quote unquote normal? And how am I feeling overall? I also tried to check in if I found myself in a dysregulated state because the app also provides strategies. So if I were to check in a more escalated state after I complete the check-in, it's like, hey, do you want to try this strategy for when you're feeling that way? And so I found that to be helpful, just to try new things out. So you'll see some of the data off to the side, just showing some of the things that you can see and the data that you can take away using that app. I also think journaling was really helpful. I think a lot of times when we find ourselves in a heightened emotional state, um, we've got so many thoughts running through our brain, and so just being able to transfer that from my brain to paper was cathartic, but also after I'm regulated from that emotional state, it's hard for me to remember some of the things I was feeling. So being able to go back and see what I was truly thinking and feeling in that state was helpful. It allowed me to see, some of the fears or like the deep issues, or themes that were consistent, amongst those heightened moments. And I think that helped me really, I guess, pinpoint some things that I might need to, further talk with my therapist about. So, and I think it overall helped me to identify moments where, hey, if you're in this, situation, you might be more predisposed to reacting versus responding. So I feel like overall that was really helpful, and I honestly plan to continue to use the app. If you don't have it, I recommend it. This is not a sponsorship. I'm not paid, but I do think it is really helpful, to see, all of the emotions I felt, my mood throughout the day, throughout the week, what I was doing and where I was with. Like it does a really great job of keeping track of all of that. And I think it's just very interesting to go back and look at that and use it, to help make predictions about what could I maybe do to help myself long term.
For my self development project, I chose to focus on consistent physical activity during middle adulthood. Many adults struggle to balance responsibilities and prioritize their health. This is a stage where physical activity becomes increasingly important, and my biggest challenge was finding the time for consistent physical activity due to daily responsibilities. Initially, my activity level was low, which negatively impacted my energy and my overall well being. To improve this behavior, I began setting small, realistic goals, such as a short 15 to 20-minute walk. I also had to change my mindset by realizing that exercise does not have to take a large amount of time to be effective. Through consistency and flexibility, I gradually improved my routine and noticed increased energy levels. Many of the same theories apply to both my other development and self-development projects. Piaget talks about abstract thinking. This abstract thinking allowed me to reflect on my own habits and make intentional changes to improve my behavior. Erickson's theory highlights generativity versus stagnation. This helped me reflect on the developmental task in my current stage of life. Vygotsky talks about the importance of social support in development. This social learning theory also played a role in my own growth as I modeled healthy behaviors and learned from others who successfully maintain active lifestyles.
I think all in all, Kim and I both realized that habits really do become habitual through consistency. You don't just miraculously wake up and have it all together, as much as I think we all wish that we could have that happen. So it really does start with those small achievable steps and having a growth mindset with yourself. Like, we are human, and as I said before, this is all of our first time at life. We're still learning and growing and figuring things out. So even if we fall off track one day and we don't handle something in the correct way, or we miss a day of working out or eating right, or we speak to someone in a way that maybe we wish we hadn't. All of those things are part of growing, and embracing those moments and realizing those are opportunities to identify, what I want to do different next time, I think is a huge game changer in, the way we can continue to approach the rest of our lives. I think as long as we're striving to make better choices for ourselves, we're moving in the right direction. I think it's okay to try something out and realize, this isn't working as well for me. So let me pivot and try something else. But I think it really is about the effort and the choice to continually show up for ourselves. So I think start small and set big goals for yourself, but also show yourself the same compassion that you would show other people. A final thought or something to consider, we chose a floral theme, and that was highly intentional for our presentation and what we wanted to discuss, because development in our lives, they're all about growth, similar to those of flowers. They all have very humble beginnings, of that as a seed, as do we, and sometimes those seeds don't always start out in the most conducive conditions to life. However, you know, there are opportunities for growth. And, I think having hope in our lives and hope in ourselves and making those efforts to continue to grow, recognizing what we are able to do and what we need support with, are key components in that growth for ourselves throughout our lives.
In conclusion, both adolescent and middle adulthood presents unique developmental challenges. By applying developmental theories, we can better understand these challenges and respond with effective strategies. Both self-development and supporting others requires patience, empathy, and consistency. Remember, growth is a process and every small step matters. Take a moment to reflect on your own challenges and think about one small step you can take today. Thank you for listening, and we encourage you to apply these strategies in your own life or when supporting others.